Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Angliston.
That rarely happens. That rarely happens. I get short already. Oh, yes, please. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know what they're saying over there, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the good people of Angliston to contribute to this debate. And in doing so, I want to dedicate my contribution to the memory of the late Sir Arlington Butler, who was the first speaker in an independent Bahamas, and the late Ronnie Butler, who penned that famous anthem, Burma Road. And I think it's very appropriate that this is the way I begin my presentation in light of what we are doing today in this Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, as you've heard, we will not support this legislation, Mr. Speaker. We will not. And it's not because, as the member for East Grand Bahama says, we don't really understand how good it is for us. It's because we understand very clearly what it is, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to hearken back to Marcus Garvey and a quote that I refer over and over, but it's very important. He says, a people without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And this is very true, Mr. Speaker. In almost every single endeavor, it's important to know the journey and from whence we have come. So we understand very clearly what's happening today in this Parliament, Mr. Speaker. The bill tells us in the objects and reasons what this government is doing. And it says the bill seeks to, quote, liberalize, that's a word now, that's a term of art, liberalize the granting of work permits as a term of art to an establishment which wishes to establish itself in the Bahamas and requires work permits. That's from the bill itself, and that's what they said the reason and objects are. And East Grand Bahama, forgive me, but I'm going to refer to you quite a bit because I was here for your presentation. I missed a few, which I regret. No, I just want to, I believe that you will bring the ethos to where you're coming from, either intentionally or otherwise. The member for East Grand Bahama further elaborated and supports this liberalization by advising that this House, that we, in his words, we have to open up the economy, that we have to be wary of, and I quoted him while I sat here, protecting what we think is big when the rest of the world is moving in another direction. He admonishes us that we have to modernize, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we are therefore liberalizing our immigration policy today. Then
the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for East Grand Bahama.
The member can say that I inferred, maybe, but she cannot say that that quote that she just gave is a quote from me. I do not believe that is true. In fact, I know it's not true. So, you know, again, I don't ask her to retract it because I take no offense for her. She's in flight. But it's important that if she's going to quote me correctly.
Mr. Speaker, the member will be very surprised. I have some other quotes because he said a lot of things while I was sitting here, and I wrote it down. So, and that is one of them, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we are therefore liberalizing our immigration policy today. And we're being told that this is, the whole world is moving in another direction. But the world I'm living in, I don't see that. I want to know what direction East Grand Bahama, talking about that the rest of the world, we see in Europe, in the UK, they just had Brexit. In the United States, we see the tightening there. The only place where we see these kind of things happening is in the region, where they're selling citizenship now in the region. Okay? So let's be accurate about where we are contextualizing our country. We are now falling more in line with them people down, some of our brothers and sisters down south, who are selling citizenship. And I'm saying that deliberately, Mr. Speaker, because I want the Bahamian people to know we got to watch this government, because they're on a track right now which is causing me grave concern, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't see the world going in no other direction. What I see is what the Bahamas is doing in line with some very offensive policies, in my view, that's happening in the region, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what the rest of the world is, what the rest of the world is in East Grand Bahama is referring to, and he's saying that he's describing a negative about our Bahamianization policy. Our Bahamianization policy is how we got to be who we are, you know. You're describing our policy as a negative in light of what's happening in the rest of the world. Our current policy. Our current policy. You are amending the policy. What do you think we're doing here? You're amending the policy.
Point of order. I don't know what the member
Recognizes
is
the honourable
speaking
member for East Grand Bahama.
I don't know what the member is talking about. But again, she's referring to me and something about some Bahamianization policy or something of the sort. I don't believe I said anything about any Bahamianization policy, Mr. Speaker. What I said was that we have to look at what is happening around the world, and we have to be open to positive immigration. That is it. I said the status quo, and we cannot look back to 1967 as if we're still fighting some fight, recognizing that our economy is not growing. It has not grown for over 5 years, and if one wants to be honest, probably 10 years. In fact, we've had negative growth over the last 5 years. Negative growth. And so Mr. Speaker, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about no citizenship and no immigration, no Bahamianization or walking back in immigration. If she's going to quote me again, quote me correctly. I don't have any difficulty defending what I say.
Speaker, the economic liberalization refers to a country opening up to the rest of the world with regards to trade, regulations. This is what it means in general. Taxation, other areas which affect business in the country. So I want to know which direction are we moving in this liberalization. This is a very critical first step, and we need to let the people of our country know what it is that's happening in here. East Grand Bahama admonishes us not to be like dogs in a manger. Well, I didn't know what that meant. I heard it, so I looked it up. What does it mean? I Googled dogs in a manger. And what it means is this. It says it is an ugly-natured person who prevents others from enjoying what would be an advantage to them, but is none to him. What an interesting expression. Freud was alive and kicking in here today, Mr. Speaker. I am not sure this is the allegory he wishes, Mr. Speaker. Is he conceding that there is really and truthfully nothing in this for us? Because if he does, then we agree with him. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have had... No, Mr. Speaker, no, I'm not yielding, Mr. Speaker. I'm not yielding, no.
Honourable member.
I'm asking a question and I can do that.
You're on the point of order.
What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, the member is horribly misleading this House. Horribly. It suggests that I indicated, implied, or anything of the nature that there's nothing in this bill for Bahamians. I spoke to that, Mr. Speaker. I spoke to that. So, I mean, honestly, she's getting to the point where she's going to have to withdraw. Because really and truly, she is horribly... Remember your orange pin. You know, she's horribly misleading. Horribly misleading. I don't want to be a part of the 3%, Mr. Speaker. Come on, man. Stick to the point.
That we should not be like dogs in a manger. I looked it up. And I'm saying, is that what you meant when you said it? Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Speaker,
you mean that?
Again, Mr. Speaker.
No, I'm speaking. No, Speaker.
No, allow me to answer.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm asking at large. No, I'm not yielding.
No, you asked me the question.
Speaker, would you assist me? I'm not yielding for this member.
Honourable member.
I'm asking the Bahamian people the
Honourable
question,
member.
not you.
On a point of order. Are you on a point of order?
Mr. Speaker, the member could try all he wants, but we heard what he said, and it was a Freudian slip. And he said, we cannot be like dogs in a manger, Speaker. He said that. I didn't say that. I didn't even know what it meant. I had to look it up. So, Mr. Speaker, the FNM says, the FNM seems to be saying then that we think that we on this side are seeking to protect, what we are seeking to protect is big, but really it's not. That we should not begrudge advantages to others just because we're not getting anything out of it. That we will not be dogs in a manger, Mr. Speaker. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, what is happening here today is very big. It's very important. It's a matter of grave concern for the direction of our beloved country, Mr. Speaker. We have yet to hear in this rushed debate the benefit to Bahamians. I heard some argument again from East Grand Bahama that somehow Bahamians will be, in my words, infected by the intellectual wealth or smarts of the foreign enterprise or individual, that there's some next budding Google-like founder or developer might be in that 250,000 range startup business. I find that very interesting, because Freud been working hard here today. Well, I might say, as a Bahamian, that the next Google founder developer might be from over the hill, sitting in a classroom earlier today, Albright, in E.P. Roberts Primary, I said, in Angleton. But we'll say Albright anywhere that a child could be right now, could be that. The point is we don't need to be infected. That's the point. Yes, infected, Speaker. Speaker, we should be talking about how we are going to stimulate and activate the creative genius of that Bahamian child. That's what we should be talking about. Not come in here and talk about our Bahamian people in the way in which has transpired in this debate, Speaker. Speaker, but instead, what is being proposed here is a sad viewpoint about the Bahamian people. This debate, Mr. Speaker, signifies a radical policy shift. Yes. 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 And it is a breakaway from successive administrations who saw the value in protecting and promoting Bahamian labor and securing opportunity for our people. A policy which favors Bahamians over all others in our own country, Mr. Speaker. That is why, when the member for Cat Island, Rumkey in San Salvador asked for this debate to be postponed, because we understand what this debate is about. It is a radical shift that goes back generations. And you've come in here to cause for a debate. You've rushed it, and you have postponed the Freedom of Information Act. You've postponed all kinds of the Listening Devices Act. All kinds of bills are being deferred because of concerns. But oh, not this one. Something so fundamentally and so potentially impactful to the future development of our country, the dreams of our children. A shift from an age-old, tried and proven policy to protect Bahamians in their own country. A policy that the Minister of Labor himself, and I'm going to quote that, the Minister Dion Smith, who's a, Folks. No, Dion Folks, sorry. No, I'm not confused, are you? Dion Folks, he said, and he said this in early days, he said that the Prime Minister directed him, on a radio show, that no work permits would be issued where Bahamians are qualified for the job. No foreigner should get a work permit where there are qualified Bahamians to fill the position. That's the Bahamianization policy, Mr. Speaker. So this is still policy? Okay, we come back to that, Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, he said that this was the policy. But we've come in here now. They're asking what is the difference. I want to get to it, but the difference is this, is that this unit will give a certificate, which is actually the effect of giving a work permit to these people. I mean, you say you can apply to immigration, if they don't apply in 14 days, they deemed to have had it. So really, in truth, the unit, whoever in this unit, will be issuing work permits on an automatic basis, not with no labor certificate, none of that stuff. Automatically, Bahamians will be ousted from opportunity in these areas. This is not consistent with the policy of our country, Mr. Speaker. You're going to get to the businesses that you've targeted, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, this is a radical departure from our immigration policy. This is fundamental what is happening here today. This legislation says that they will give work permits whether or not a Bahamian can fill the position. That's what they're saying, Speaker. Speaker, there should be widespread discussion and feedback on this bill, including from ordinary Bahamians. And Yamakro, I heard you said about downloading from the internet, but I'm not talking about that kind of interaction with Bahamian people. This kind of policy shift should be the subject of dialogue and discussion with our people throughout this country, Mr. Speaker. But then again, Mr. Speaker, the FNM told us that it is the people's time. But we admit, you never said which people. I was assuming you meant the Bahamian people. But you don't mean the Bahamian people, because we have not seen anything in what you have done which indicates that you are committed to the interests of our people. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say, Speaker, you, the Free National Movement government, has no mandate from the electorate to tamper with our Bahamianization policy. You have no mandate. You have no right to modernize in your words, or whatever words you use to justify foreigners coming into our country and getting automatic work permits. Speaker, and you want to give work permits whether or not there is a bright young Bahamian or any qualified Bahamian living in his or her own country who cannot access economic opportunities, Speaker. And Speaker, the member, I heard them saying about there will be no direct competition, Speaker.
Honourable Member for Elizabeth, are you on a point of order?
On a point of order, Mr. Speaker. Very simply, Mr. Speaker, the member for Engliston continues to mislead not only this Honourable House but the public by stating that work permits will be issued in the event, even in the event that there's a qualified Bahamian. There is no narrative in this bill that says that. She is inferring, which is a very long stretch, Mr. Speaker.
First of all, there's no process that I know of. This thing goes to this unit, whatever this unit is. In immigration, there's a process. It's transparent. Now, this going to this unit, and so no, I'm trying to figure out now how the labor certificate. The whole purpose of the labor certificate is to identify Bahamians. This is eliminating that. So I hear what the member is saying with misleading, but we know where the misleading is happening, and the misleading is a very diabolical nature. What I see happening here, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, yes, not everything. Really? Then you need to change your practices and stop being diabolical with the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the point I am making is that this is a radical departure. They do not have the mandate of the Bahamian people to do something like this. This has not even been properly articulated in the public domain. I saw a couple of business articles in the business section of the Tribune, and I understand what was going on there. That was, softening the ground for this debate. But in terms of going out there and actually speaking to people and letting the Bahamian people know what it is you are seeking to do, that has not happened. And this reminds me of, in a lot of ways, the BTC giveaway, except it's 10 times, a million times more serious, more fundamental. Speaker, on the issue of the bill, just to give a summary, because pardon me? Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill applies to any person who's specified as a commercial enterprise. Now, the schedule of industry that this refers to is very interesting, and as has been said by one or two speakers over there, very broad. So, but the other point I want to make about I think that the point was made before I get this, Mr. Speaker, was that there'll be no direct competition with Bahamians. But if you argue Bahamians are not in the industry per se, so the direct competition is not the issue. The issue is closing the door on opportunity. That's the issue. So this talk about competition with Bahamians is to obfuscate what is really happening, Mr. Speaker. What is happening is this policy now, which is a departure from the normal, transparent policy which allows a qualified Bahamian in his or her own country, the only place we got, but allow them to access opportunities. This particular departure will now do away with that, whether the person has the ability, whether they're techie or any of those issues, because this unit will issue work permits on the face, right there at carte blanche, Mr. Speaker. And, Speaker, let me just go over the areas that they say. I heard you saying it's not right, but I'm quoting your words. The dog in the manger. Mr. Speaker, the areas that they're covered, and they're very broad. And the question is, what...
Honourable member for Marco City, the chair recognizes the honourable member. Are you on a point of order?
Yeah, to follow up on the point raised by the Minister of Health, by Elizabeth. 8, under application for permit, it reads, Mr. Speaker, any person entering the Bahamas pursuant to Section 7.3 shall within 30 days of such entry submit a complete application for a work permit to the Department of Immigration.
Right.
So so what concerned me about what you're saying, why I tend to agree with Elizabeth, it is misleading if you say to the public that the granting of a work permit is automatic, despite the fact that it is.
Don't try that. Don't try that, David. I'll just.
Let me finish the point. Despite the fact that it is saying quite clearly that you must apply to the same folks you're saying are now irrelevant in the process. So just to finish it, and then on the issue of the 14 days, the only point being made here, this isn't saying because 14 days is mentioned that no matter what the investigation turns up, the person will get the permit. It's simply saying that in the event that the government does not respond, it's automatic. And this does not mean that other established companies that exist now, because I've certainly seen what's online, let me just finishing? No, let me, I'm sorry, I'm normally an expert on where my words should go, so just let me complete it for a minute. I'm saying, but I think a point of order trumps that. Just give me a chance. No, it's a point of order. So you know, no, it's a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member, he's on a point of order.
I'm a point.
It's my time. What is this point of order, please?
The point of order is that the statements that being made are misleading the House.
Which rule is that, Mr. Speaker? No, the member should indicate the rule, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Speaker, I'm quite aware of what the legislation says, Speaker, and so I don't need the member to rehash it for me.
No, I just wanted to complete the point.
Speaker, the point I'm making is this, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, you're going to find the rule? But I hope you do that when my time comes. The Speaker will find the rule for him, no problem.
I'm not finding the rule for him. I thought you were raising the issue on whether or not.
I'm rising on a point of. Sorry,
Honourable member, rise on a point of order. If his point of order is that the member who is speaking is misleading the House.
I was wondering if the member knew the rule. If he doesn't have it.
Are you going on a technicality or the substance?
So, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. So I'd like to just.
Right. You finished?
No, I'm not. So again, I just want to say, Mr. Speaker, to the public by way of you, that the member for Angliston is fully aware that a person having received a certificate to conduct a business that does not exist in this jurisdiction must follow the law of the country, which is to apply through the normal channels for a work permit. So in no way is the granting of the certificate saying that you will be granted a work permit, because there can be circumstances that the Department of Immigration discover that will preclude you, will prevent you from receiving a work permit. So it is not correct that it is automatic. That's the point I'm making.
Speaker, I think the member, no disrespect to him, he needs to read the legislation. What this is saying, Mr. Speaker, in a nutshell, and I can go through the sections, but maybe my learned friend do it more effectively. I just want to summarize it. You apply to the investment board, which creates this unit, which is some subset, I assume. I don't know who this unit is. They apply, and once they satisfy this unit, that it falls within the criteria of this bill, which says that it's whatever, it's the scheduled industries, etc., that it will issue a certificate. Once that certificate is issued, within 30 days, they must apply for a work permit. If the Director of Immigration does not reply within 14 days, which is 10 working days, I assume, okay, it could be 14 working days, it could be 30 working days, it could be, we're in the real world here, that if the Director does not respond, that it will be deemed that that person has a work permit. So the effect of this is after 14 days, it is deemed, and you don't need to get up no more. So, Mr. Speaker, this is what So the member for East Grammar said immigration better do his job. But the Bahamian people are sensible, you know. We can read between the lines. We know what they're doing, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, the areas that are described. So, Mr. Speaker, that is what I mean when I said automatic. Because once that certificate is given and you apply, if immigration don't apply in 14 days, too bad, too sad, you got your work permit. Speaker. No, Mr. Speaker. No. I'm again. You already explained yourself. I'm going to finish it. Speaker, the areas in the first schedule, Mr. Speaker,
You want a point of order?
insurance.
Honourable member,
Speaker.
the members want a point of order.
Okay, what is the point of order?
State your
Yes,
point of order.
yes, Mr. Speaker, again, the member continues to mislead the House, restating the same fallacy that she's been stating before. If you look at 9, under compliance and licensing and regulatory requirement, it reads, notwithstanding the issuance of the said certificate, any specified commercial enterprise, and where required, its employees shall comply with the terms and conditions set by the relevant regulatory agencies or professional regulatory body in the Bahamas. In much the same way the person has to comply with all other regulations. Just to go back to a point one of my colleagues raised earlier about town meetings being held. The new business have to, if it is required by a subdivisions act, to go ahead and hold a town meeting with residents. In the same way, the person must apply to the Department of Regulation, of Immigration. So when she talks about 14 days, what she's failing to say is that many things can happen within the 14 days, including the denial of a work permit. And I think it's unfair for her to leave on the record that it is automatic when clearly it says that the Department of Immigration has a window to act in to determine for or against a work permit, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member.
I hear all this thing about where you don't subdivision and all that. I don't see that in the bill, but I'm sure the member has information that we don't have because he sits in the cabinet. But I'm talking about what's in the law right here. But as it relates to the issue of what I'm referring to, look at Section 8, which deals with application for work permits. So this provision provides that if you enter and you're a in-house professional or an executive, you can work, as the member Caroline reminds me, for 30 days with nothing. No work permit, no nothing. Then, however, you apply for a work permit. The Director of Immigration shall determine any work permit applied for not later than 14 working days after the filing thereof. We clear on that? 14 working days after the filing thereof, and the payment of the application fee, failing which the work permit shall be deemed, did I use that word, deemed? The work permit shall be deemed to have been granted. I don't want to get stuck on that, Mr. Speaker, and I wish the member would just allow me to complete, because the law is very clear what is happening here. Once you get that certificate, you straight, basically. 14 days, Mr. Speaker, within 14 days, the Speaker, sorry? You do. This allows for it. This allows for it. You ain't read it, eh? You didn't read this?
Point of order, Mr.
Honourable member.
Speaker, what's the point
The
of
chair
order?
recognizes the member for Yamacraw.
Thank the honourable.
Are you on a point of order, honourable member?
Yes. I thank the honourable member for yielding. Mr. Speaker, and I rise on a point of order
Yes.
and respectfully submit that the honourable member is misleading the House. There's nowhere in this act that ouses where there's a provision that ousts the provisions of the Immigration Act.
Okay.
There's nowhere in this act that you would find a section that saying, notwithstanding the provision of the Immigration Act, that someone would be granted something. The provision is clear. That,
Okay.
and not that you would work for the 30 days. You're allowed to enter, and you must make the application. And please, and you must make the application.
That's not what this is saying.
And once you, and it is clear.
No.
So the Immigration Department has their discretion to issue the work permit is there, because you will make an application to that organization. They will then have to determine that application. Even if there's not a response within 14 days and you're granting the provision at the end of it, it still says that they retain the right to reject it based on public safety
public morality, or national security. And I was clear in my submission as to how broad that is.
Right.
But this act does not, I want the Bahamian people to be clear, it does not oust and it does not take away the power of the Immigration Department to do what it has to do. And the spirit and the breath of the Immigration Act is that they must determine in these circumstances whether or not there's a qualified being. They must go through that whole activity. Now, we all know that in the Bahamas, and that's why I use, just one moment, why I use Bahama. When you bring in questions, sometimes the managers of the institution are allowed to work. But there's nothing in this act, as I said before, that ouses or reduces the obligation of the Immigration Department to do its work.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island on
Section
San Salvador.
7.3 of this bill says, and I read, where such certificate, which the member of Angus has been talking about, once you get the certificate in hand, where such certificate has been issued, the person who receives the same and any in-house professional designated by him in writing may freely, what's the word? Freely enter the Bahamas for the purpose of setting up or conducting such specified commercial enterprise in reliance upon the said certificate. The immigration,
you may enter for that purpose. For that purpose, it does not say that you start to work or set up.
Well, that's what it's saying. That's what it's saying.
Mr. Speaker,
for the purpose of setting up
is to make your application within 30 days.
Mr. Speaker,
there's a provision in this act that clearly says application for work permit. This act, the breath and spirit of this act does not oust the Immigration Act or the duties and responsibilities of the Immigration Department.
He's the advisor.
He's the senior member of the
Honourable members, two members cannot be on the floor at the same time.
And I'm surprised that he's saying that. I said you may enter the Bahamas for the purpose.
Honourable member, both members resume your seats. Both members. Honourable member, I ask for both members to resume the seat. Honourable member, resume your seat. The honourable member for Angleston, are you ready to continue?
I'm not finished. And I don't allow me to come in because the word is quite clear. Once you get the certificate, you could come into this country freely and you come in to work. The Minister of Finance admits this, he agrees this. And I don't know why his members are not understanding it. You're coming here for setting up or conducting the business. That's what Section 7.3 says. Now, once you're here, it requires you within 30 days. Now, once you enter freely, and you're either setting up your business or you're conducting the business, you are now required within 30 days to apply for the work permit. So you can stay here for at least 30 days before you apply. That displaces the process of the immigration which the member is speaking about. And it's dishonest for the member who is the advisor of the government to say otherwise. And the member of Finance has agreed with this from his table, from sitting down here.
Honourable member for Yamakro.
If dishonesty bites some of us, we would not feel it. I haven't identified anybody, whether or not they be in this house or outside of this house, right? I stick by my point that it says you can enter for the purposes of doing that. A part of the purpose is you must make your application. Until this act does not oust the power of the Immigration Department to give that license. And he knows better.
Honourable member for Angleston.
Speaker, I believe I could read, okay, Mr. Speaker?
You can read it.
I could read. I'm going to read this again about this, what the role of directive immigration is. The Director of Immigration shall determine any work permit applied for not later than 14 days after the filing thereof, and the payment of the application fee. Failing which, that's if he doesn't do his job in 14 days, failing which the work permit shall be deemed to have been granted, so he gets his work permit, and may only be later revoked if the director has reasonable grounds for so doing on the basis of public safety, public morality, or national security. But we're talking about immigration policy and work permits, the labor certificate, the process that protects Bahamians in the workplace. That is what I'm talking about, Mr. Speaker. So this is what this will be talking about. And they made me work hard, Mr. Speaker, and that is why, Mr. Speaker, I decry this process to bring this legislation in this way, because you see the debate that ensued just now about it, and certainly what has been advocated on that side, but what the words on here say and the meaning of these words are not shared on this side, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the other point I want to make in this legislation, so we're not interested in this issue about competition with Bahamians, because the issue is not competition. The issue is whether you are denying opportunity. We now know that the whole purpose of this legislation, we talk about the zoning, but we know the whole purpose is the work permit. The work permit, it's an incentive to the industry. So don't come in here and try to, why be trying to make the Bahamian people believe they don't know what they know, they don't see what they see, and why are we doing this? Let's be honest with the people, this is what you're doing. But the other concern I have, Mr. Speaker, is this point that was made about how, you know, you're going to train some Bahamians, and Bahamians are going to transfer technology. But look at the section. The section is very interestingly worded. And I'm very disappointed in the wording, because at least you could do something here, Mr. Speaker. This is what they say here. Every application to the board shall be in a prescribed form as shown in the schedule, etc., etc. And then it says that specify the nature of the proposed commercial enterprise, its staffing needs, inclusive of the number of work permits. So this is a work permit bill, man. That's what you're doing here. We're incentivizing with labor in our country. And then you say here, this is what they say now, work permits which may be required, and such training and capacity building opportunities as may be agreed. This is new. As may be agreed. We now got to agree with them. How long, I mean, when they can train Bahamians and they get work permit just like that? I mean, I'm trying to figure this out. Why couldn't we have said, mandated? You are mandated during this process to train Bahamians. I'd feel a little better about this legislation. But the language is so loose and so uncommitted in terms of what it means to the Bahamian people. And so I wanted to point that out, because I'm very disappointed in this particular clause, and you could have done better. You're doing bad on the whole, but you could have done a lot better with that one, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, we had similar legislation. Speaker, we saw similar incentives with the Hawksbill Creek Agreement in the early days. And then the argument was niche. And I got a little distracted with this issue of niche. Some of the, these are very broad categories. So I don't know how you could have niche with such broad categories. For example, wealth management. It's huge. What is that? That could probably be 1,000,001 things. But you're talking about niche. What is a niche? And then the thing I'm interested in is the boutique health facility. What is that? Because I was saying it doesn't say medical, it says health. So what is anticipated with this, and what level of competition are we going to see? Massages? Oh, spas? Well, once the people in this country know that we're now going to be opening up for spas in our country, and Bahamians do very well in spas, and if that's what you mean, I don't know. Call centers. My Lord, you need to give work permit to answer the phone for Bahamians. We're phone experts. Nobody deals with the phone better than Bahamians. Speaker? So, Mr. Speaker, as I indicated, the debate today signifies a radical policy shift far removed from what they promised. They accused us of bringing in the Chinese, but we know that they brought, just the last election, how we did this, that, and annexing the Chinese. But we know that it was the Free National Movement that brought the Chinese into our economy, that gave out the 8,000 work permits, and then in opposition talked about the Chinese and the Chinese and the Chinese. we now know, Mr. Speaker, that the Bahamian people have to face the reality. These people are not consistent about what it is they believe in and what is their principles on these things. Because you say one thing, and then you come right back and you do something completely different, Mr. Speaker. What you're doing now, in my view, is institutionalizing the marginalization of the Bahamian people. And you're doing it in a way that I say is effectively under the radar. Because even though we're on TV right now, and it's transpiring in plain sight, I don't believe it's any accident that this has been quietly pursued by this government. Because you know how Bahamians feel about this issue. You know how they feel about this issue. So, Speaker, this F&M government is seeking in this House today, and I want Bahamians everywhere to hear me, Mr. Speaker, to uproot what was heretofore an entrenched policy that protected Bahamians and their own economy. This slams the door shut in a variety of areas. And in the area of those, in respect to those areas, Mr. Speaker, what is interesting, the minister responsible, I think it's the Minister of Immigration, I believe, has the ability to add new categories with the stroke of a pen. So today we're talking about the first schedule, but tomorrow, next week, next month, we don't know what the minister can put in there, what he can write to add more areas for more work permits in our economy, Speaker. I have an objection to that, Mr. Speaker. It should be clear and define what you're doing, but we don't support it in any event. But you're further making this muddy and murky by giving the minister the capacity to add more and more areas of the economy for automatic work permits in this country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker,
Carry this mark.
So, Mr. Speaker, and I want to ask, and I'm serious about this. People come in, they get their work permits, they set up their businesses. Speaker, I think they're going to have to track permanent residence and citizenship applications because I'm very concerned. Yeah. I'm concerned. And I know that the minister is going to speak, and I would like him to put on the record the position of this government on economic citizenship, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, so, Mr. Speaker, the policy is one that has been respected by successive administrations, the PLP, the F&M, Pinling, Ingram, Christie. It took the member for Kalani to come and bring this type of legislation. My brother from over the hill who sold newspapers and sew pants. Come in this parliament now and bring legislation that reduces opportunity for the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker, potentially. So, Speaker, as so rightly pointed out by East Grand Bahama, it was the policies of post-1967 and the first majority rule government that through deliberate policy, which was primarily immigration policy, but which necessitated education policy. That's what we should be talking about. How do we prepare our people? Not coming and telling me we ain't ready. I don't want no government tell me my people ain't ready, and so we got to give opportunity elsewhere, Mr. Speaker. Get on your feet and say we are not ready for opportunity in this country. Speaker, the Bahamianization policy helped to move a people from being undeveloped or from what I call social and economic retardation, from a pre-1967 situation. You know how it was. You couldn't get beyond grade 6. You couldn't work in banks. Let me read Marcus Garvey to you again. Let me read Marcus Garvey. A people without knowledge of their history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. You want us to forget. You want us to forget the journey. You want us to see this as some nicey little thing. You don't want us to understand where we're coming from. Speaker. And the Bahamianization policy, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, would you assist me, please?
So much noise.
The Bahamianization policy was brought about by aggressive,
Honourable members,
courageous, and deliberate policies to redress the underdevelopment of our people. Speaker, this bill destroys in a major way the fundamental principle of labor in this country. This is not a niche policy. This is not. This is a gouging out of the foundation policy upon which this country was built. It's a very, and you're smirking over there, but it's not funny. And I hope the Bahamian people are listening to what you're doing here, Speaker. This is not using immigration as a tool of national development as claimed, but using immigration to push back the Bahamian people. That's what you're doing now. Whether you intend to do that, that's what you're doing, Speaker. Yeah, because you say we ain't ready. You say being ready. And then you told them, you're saying in this legislation, when the foreigners come here to open up their businesses, they don't have to train Bahamians. You say, maybe we could talk about it. That's what you say in this legislation, Speaker. Change the language then. The language does not make it mandatory. The policy right now makes it mandatory. You must. You must. So, Mr. Speaker, contrary to what is being advanced by this government, because what the member for East Grand Bahamas is saying, he's saying we must loosen the laws. It might have been Yamakro, loosen the laws to help Bahamians develop. So in other words, loosen the immigration laws, bring in foreigners, and Bahamians will develop. That's the theory. Whereas historically, it was the opposite way around. That you tighten the laws to protect Bahamians, and then Bahamians develop. And we did well. We did very well post-67 as a result of that, Mr. Speaker. The arguments in here are upside down, Mr. Speaker. And we know what will happen when the protections disappear. It is not correct for this government to make such a fundamental assault on the Bahamian people without dialogue, Mr. Speaker. I am reminded and understanding how this government sees the world, that it was the same F&M government that decided that they were going to amend the land law, the Movable Property Act, and bring in the International Holding Act. And as a result, we know what happened. We don't even know. We don't have a clue how many thousands of acres have been sold. And that's what the Free National Movement introduced a policy, which was a radical shift from an earlier policy, which used land as an instrument of economic development. Now we're talking about labor as an instrument of economic development, Speaker. This is very serious, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this structural change, in my view, is inflicting psychic damage on the Bahamian people. So contrary to what East Grand Bahama is saying, we are indeed doing something big. And what we are seeking to protect on this side is something very important, and it has tremendous value. Believe it or not, it has tremendous value. Yes. And I think the Bahamian people will agree. I hope they're listening to know what you all are doing in this parliament tonight, without dialogue, without discussion, without warning. It wasn't in your speech from the throne. You didn't put it in your manifesto. But you come in here and you rush it through. We asked for an adjournment. You're putting everything else and other things in the committee. You cannot do it with this. You want to get it through. And that makes me, see, when the Free National Movement amended the land laws, they did it because they were catering to vested interests at that time. And the vested interest at that time, what happened? You got a problem with that, St. Anne's? The vested interest at the time was, I believe, I think it was Grand Bahama. It was the Port Authority that made certain demands on the government. So the land laws were changed. So I want to know, I'm only asking a question. I'm asking at large, I'm asking rhetorically, what is motivating this government to bring about this kind of legislation which is marginalizing Bahamian labor in this country, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the member said zero growth. My goodness. My goodness.
Zero growth.
Wow. Speaker, I feel disappointed that the government says that it has run out of ideas, and the only way it can run out of ideas is to sell out the labor of this country to stimulate the economy, Mr. Speaker. And that has been the oldest argument in the book. It was the argument of the UBP to give work permits, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members.
So, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, you know, I hear the member say zero growth, but he has not said, I have not heard anyone here say what the impact is going to be. Because normally you can say you can create, we anticipate this is going to create 1,000 jobs. It's going to have effect on the GDP or something. So we hear none of that. All we're hearing now, Mr. Speaker, is that they've got zero growth. They've run out of ideas. They don't give up land as an incentive for economic development. Now they can give up labor. My Lord, what next? What next are you all going to do to try and come up with an idea in this country? Speaker? Afraid? Did I look like I'm afraid to you? You better look good. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it's very unfortunate that the Free National Movement has put us back is beginning to put us back into a vicious cycle that we were extricated from in 67. The Free National Movement has taken us back there. Now it's land, now it's labor, Mr. Speaker. And, Speaker, so I am asking, I think it was the member for Yamakro said that it's symbiosis and not parasitic. But I miss the symbiosis part. I've not heard anything from this government as to what value this is going to bring. They're telling us that someone can come and set up a business for $250,000, be a sole proprietor. I heard that, a sole proprietor. And that is somehow going to take us from zero growth to something else, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I am asking this government to leave this bill in committee. Do not attempt to pass this legislation. The Bahamian people are not aware that you are interfering with their immigration policy in a fundamental way. You do not have a mandate. We will not support it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.